We have a special one today and a special guest. But just as a quick reminder, we do these pretty much every Thursday now at 9 a.m. Pacific. And the whole goal of Sub Club Live is that I've heard for years from podcast listeners that they sit in the car listening to the podcast and just shout into the void, like, what about this or what about that? And so Sub Club Live is all about getting top people in the space on live on YouTube so that we can ask questions and have a more candid conversation. And instead of shouting into the void, you can actually ask them those questions. Hoping to have more of the podcast guests on soon as follow-ups to the podcast. So we're going to keep experimenting with this format and just have fun with it. So today we have a very special guest, Shamanth. And Shamanth, I'll let you do a quick intro, but I love having folks like Shamanth on because he has a ton of experience running ads, and he's actually the one who proposed this format, roast my ads. So I'm actually pretty excited to do this. I think it's going to be super valuable and really interesting. I don't run a lot of ads, or I don't run any ads right now, and haven't run a lot of ads myself. So it's great to have a guest like Shamanth on, who's day in, day out, overseeing hundreds, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of ads at this point, so maybe millions. So it's great to have you on. If you'll maybe give a quick introduction.
Yeah, David, great to be here. I've worked in ads not nearly as long as you have. And I'm all, thankful to have had you on my podcast, Intelligent Artifice, which is hopefully going to come out next week. So again, as David said, done this for a very, very long time, run a boutique agency, run a podcast on mobile and growth, which you can check out on Mobile User Acquisition Show and Intelligent Artifice.
Awesome. So I asked Shamanth to kick things off with the top 3 things he's been thinking about in subscription app creative right now. So let's kick it off with that, Shamanth. The first one you brought up was audience diversity beats audience monoculture. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So in order to unlock any sort of meaningful scale, we just see you need to go after smaller micro audiences, if you will, which means if you're like a fitness app, you still want to be speaking to postpartum moms, if you will, millennial dads. So the more micro audiences you go after, the more you can scale, because the algorithm will limit you if you don't.
Gotcha. So, I mean, how do you think about doing that though? Because you're not
Yeah.
saying you don't like set up an ad creative and then target that ad creative specifically. You're letting the algorithm kind of
Yes.
do the targeting itself. So you're saying more in the creative production, you want to
Yes.
diversify your creatives and think about those diversity of audiences when you're doing the creatives, right?
Yes, 100%. And we'll talk about this more in this presentation. But a lot of the biggest advertisers in the world test thousands of ads on a monthly basis. And you don't get to thousands of ads on a monthly basis by changing your CTA button.
Right.
You get to thousands of ads by visual variety, some of which you can see on the screen. These ads look visually different and they will appeal to very different kinds of users. And like I said, the other way to think about this is to really call out the right kind of user. You say, hey, this is for millennial moms. This is for freelancers making over $1,000 a month. So the more specific you are, the algorithm will do the targeting. The algorithm's gotten very, very sophisticated at targeting the right kind of user if we call it out in the ad creative.
Cool. That makes a lot of sense. Before we go on, I forgot to mention those of you watching live. If you have an ad you want roasted and haven't already submitted it, we do have some submissions and we have some audience questions already. But feel free to drop a link in the chat, or if you reply to Shamanth's tweet, We'll pick that up toward the end after we've gone through some of the already submitted ones. So yeah, and then feel free to ask questions in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat, trying to keep it casual today. So happy to interrupt for questions that are on topic. If I see an off-topic question, I'll probably hold that to the end. But just wanted to let y'all know that because we'd love some audience participation today. All right, next up is format diversity escapes algorithmic flattening.
Yeah, this is very related to the audience diversity. But I think when you think about different audiences, yes, you're saying, hey, you can reach moms, you can reach freelancers, you can reach luxury travelers. I think the other way to think about this is different formats, because I think this is something I see with even the largest advertisers, some of which we'll talk about. They double down on one format. UGC is working really well. Let's just have UGC. Let's do static ads that look a certain way. The algorithm punishes you for that, or at least puts a ceiling above you for that.
Yeah.
And you really want to be getting to the one way to get to different audiences is by having different formats. And the screenshot you see here is from a deck from Meta, where they talk about, look, you can take the same message, but you can show it in a way that's visually very, very distinct so that each format shows differently. And that also makes sense because a user who's looking at an ad on the Meta app is very, very different from a user who's looking at it on Insta feeds versus Insta Reels versus Insta Stories. They've got a ton of those placements now. And really, the idea is to have ads that can feel native wherever the user is.
Yeah. Do you use ad formats sometimes to shape where it's going to show up? Like I have heard,
Yeah.
Facebook, the Blue app, tends to skew older audience, often, having more disposable income and whatnot. So some people are finding those ads to like really crush it. Do you ever launch an ad set where you're like, I don't want this in Reels where it's going to hit maybe a younger audience? And so can you kind of shape the algorithm by limiting the formats if in a particular case you want to do that?
100%. And that is the only way to shape the algorithm.
Right.
Just because Meta is like, do not control targeting yourselves, leave the targeting to us. They are all about automation. So the only way to really shape the audience is the creative, where like you said, the older audience is definitely the statics. Blue app, if you show square static ad, that almost invariably skews older, and vice versa, right? If you show more reels, that will show to a lot younger audiences. Certainly that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Does this apply to TikTok as well? Again, I haven't run TikTok ads myself. Are theirs all just like standard straight vertical video? And I guess slides would be the other format. Are those the only two formats, or do they also have a
Those are the
variety of
only
formats?
two. Yeah, there isn't
Okay.
nearly as much variety on TikTok, I
Yeah.
would say.
And then Google, there's like hundreds, right? And then they kind
Google,
of,
they very intentionally obfuscate exactly what kinds of ads you
yeah.
you end up showing. Yeah.
Yeah. We got a question from the audience. Let's go ahead and stop. There's one a little bit off topic, so we'll hold off on that one. But this is a good one. How do you balance creative diversity versus letting a winner without killing it too early?
Yeah. Uh, you know, if your budget is small, you don't do creative diversity, and we say that all the time. But ideally, you scale your winners and you treat it like a portfolio. You have multiple ad groups where you have one with a winner that's scaling. You have numerous other test campaigns where you get completely new ads. We have what we call warm-up campaigns where something that's winning, that has early signs, could become the next winner is running. So really, you don't let the winner scale completely, because again, we've had horror stories where we've got taken an ad from like 500 a day to like 10,000 a day. It's taking up all the spend, like 80% of the spend. Everyone's happy, everyone's doing high fives, and the 10,000 a day ad crashes. And we're like, oops, now we're burning a lot of money and everything's riding on this one ad.
Yeah.
We just had to pull back, so we don't want to depend on one big winner.
Yeah, that makes sense. We had a great question come in about AI creatives, but we actually have a whole section on that. So I'll pause that question until we get to that section, and then the other question, the more general question, I'll answer that toward the end. But let's move on to number 3. The foundation is volume, and we've kind of, I mean, this whole conversation has kind of been about that, but why don't you dig in a little deeper there?
Yeah, volume's everything today. And if you've seen some of the biggest apps in the world, you can take a look at the Meta Ads library. They're shipping in the thousands of ads weekly. And volume is the foundation, but volume is not enough because, like we talked about it, you can't ship 100 ads that all look the same. I also caution people about the other extreme where you can't ship 100 ads that look all completely different. You need to have a system to the madness. Uh,
Yeah.
and we'll talk about some of those practices further on in this roast on some of the common mistakes and some of the ways to ship thousands of ads without reinventing the wheel every single time.
Cool. All right. Wait, did I miss Oh, I missed number 3. And this was
Oh,
the AI one. I don't know how I skipped
ah,
over that. Human in
yeah.
the loop is the antidote to AI slop. So perfect timing with the question. I'll just go ahead and bring up the question so we can kind of answer it while you also talk about this idea of human in the loop. So the question is, what is your current take on AI GC creatives? Are they holding up in performance or showing fatigue? I know this is such a hot topic right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. Somebody asked me for some AI samples and they said, "Oh, this is really convincing. What's the secret?" And I was like, the secret is humans because the AI creatives are still not at a stage where you press a button and you get an amazing ad creative. So when I talk about AI creative, it means there's a human who's operating the AI that generates the AI footage, sends it to a team of designers. Like I said, we've doubled our creative team in the last year, and I've spoken to multiple app developers and founders over the last year. They've all grown their creative teams because they're like, look, this is how, if we don't grow our creative teams, you're going to get terrible ads
Yeah.
and they don't perform and they all look, they all look cringy. And that's the only way to make it not like look like the uncanny valley of things. That's the short version.
Yeah, that's great. And I've brought this up several times, and so I'm curious your take. The FTC enacted a rule like a year ago that it was very general about a user review can't be fake. So you can't have an AI who's not an actual human say, I used this app and I, lost this much weight because that's a fake review. It's not a real human. How do you think about uh, that in generating creatives?
I have read about this. I would say literally nobody follows
Nobody's
it or
following
adheres
it.
to it. Nobody's following it.
Yeah.
So I treat AI GC like I would treat a human creator, at least at this point of time, until we have any more clearer guidance.
Yeah.
There's some for TikTok, for instance, you have to very clearly disclose. You're obligated to disclose that this is an AI generated thing. But for other platforms, there isn't uh, any such obligation from the platforms at this point of time, I would say.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so we're going to get to the roast, but we did have some great questions come in, and I love the audience engagement. So let's stop and ask and answer a few of these questions that came in. What can be a good strategy for meta ads marketing for an iOS app in a competitive niche in the photo and video category with a low budget? So yeah, basically, and you've probably done this, I would imagine.
Yeah,
A photo video app wants to get started
yeah.
in ads, doesn't have a huge budget. How did you get started with something like that?
Yeah, I have a slide for what you do at low budgets, so maybe we can take it there. But the short version for the photo and video category, I would just use, for any low budget thing, use proven formats, and I'll show some of those further down in this deck. So if you could, wouldn't mind waiting, a crypto crunch, yes.
Okay, cool. And then let's get this. I actually thought this was really great. What's one unconventional creative angle I should test first for any product, and what gives confidence it can outperform the obvious approach?
I would say, if you want to do your first test, I wouldn't do any unconventional creative angle. I would do a proven creative angle.
Right.
I always tell that to early stage founders, I'm like, don't do anything new. Just because the odds of succeeding are just so low, I would look at your competitors, look at the ads that are running the longest, the ads that have the most reach in the EU, mirror those for your own product.
Gotcha. All right, well, let's move on to the roasts, and then we did have a question come in. What's the link for the ad roast? If you scroll up, it's the first comment. The team posted it, but it looks like it's from me. If you scroll up, there's a link to Shamanth's tweet. If you'll reply to that with your ad, we'll pick it up in the middle of the roast. So
Yeah.
go for it. So here, we'll get to the roast. The first roast is what works for the algorithm doesn't always work for humans. What product is this? Do you know specifically what product this
Yeah.
is? And then
Yeah.
tell us why you don't like it, or what you think could be improved.
Yeah. So this is Headway, the book summary app. And you can see here the lazy CEO destroying your company. And I never said I don't like this ad.
Oh, okay.
I just find this amusing, but also instructive because this is cringy, but it clearly works because they're testing so many variations of this. And I did this analysis where I analyzed about 700 ads for these guys, and they had 45 distinct angles. Some are less cringy, which is be a real man. Uh, some are even less cringy, like be the most interesting person in the room. But they're very alarmist and polarizing. And I don't want to be judgmental about folks like this because they're a factory, they're testing thousands of ads. I've also spoken and worked with advertisers who test this volume of ad creative. And the problem is, number one, this is a very clickbaity. It works, it gets the users in, it even gets the first trial.
Yeah,
But in
it's
terms
kind
of
of a
long term,
scroll stopper, right? It's like they do these cringy ads because if you're
yeah,
scrolling through Instagram or TikTok or whatever, you just scroll, and then you're like, ew, it
yeah,
gets you to pause for a sec. So it kind of makes sense.
yeah, it kind of makes sense at least based on conversations I've had with folks like this. The long term retention isn't the greatest,
Yeah.
and long term monetization. And it ties into what we talked about a single type of audience. It attracts the kind of user who wants an instant gratification. The problem, though, also is that this happens because at an organizational level, which means when I talk to advertisers who make thousands of ads that look somewhat like this, they're like, the algorithm's favoring this, the algorithm's winning. And I could have somebody go out, shoot a UGC, and do something very different. Number one, I have 20 designers making this sort of thing. They make shipping 3,000 ads this week. I can't justify somebody going out and shooting a UGC when I could do this, which is somewhat proven. So that's very much the question of an organizational inertia,
Yeah.
which is the hardest problem to solve. So the problem for a lot of companies in this place isn't so much finding an idea. It's that they have so much that's working within quotes, and we'll talk about the pitfalls of that, that it's hard to just go elsewhere.
Yeah, and how do you think about analyzing competitors' ads? So, like, if it sounds like you have worked with the Headway team, but maybe you didn't get a full data dump. But if it was some other random company, you see all these ads, you don't really know, even if there's a lot of volume on the ad, whether they're making money on the ad or losing money on the
Yeah,
ad. But generally, there is kind of some signal that if they're doing this many variations on that idea, there's something there. But how do you think about analyzing that when you don't really know, how
yeah,
profitable a specific format is, or, which ways it's winning? And then to your point earlier, even if it's, quote winning and, the algorithm is pushing it hard, maybe retention is bad, the intent is
yeah,
low, they're not like high quality users.
yeah, yeah. Transparently, we haven't worked with Headway.
Oh,
This
okay.
is off of the ad library, right?
Yeah,
But
right.
to answer your question, right? There's three ways there's no exact way to find out what is actually winning, to be fully clear. But there's a couple of ways we look at this. One, what is the most frequently repeated message for Headway? Because they're repeating this so often in so many different forms, I would infer and assume it's kind of working, right? So the other apps we saw, that could be a good example. If you look at the ad library, would be I think Rise Science. If you've seen them, you had them on your podcast. I've known some of the team, but they have something like, oh, this is why you can't wake up at 5:55 a.m. They have like 10 different ads in that format. You kind of know that's the messaging that works. Another way to do that would be to look at the ads with the highest reach in the EU, which Meta exposes through the API. You need some technical chops, but in the age of AI, that's not an excuse. So look that up, drop that into your agent, find that out. The other way is to look at the longevity of the ads, whatever's been running the longest in the Meta Ads library.
Gotcha. Had a user say that they posted a link, a reply to the tweet, but I'm not seeing that come in. So maybe double check that it actually posted to the tweet that's linked in there. And then Steve on our team, if you find it, send it in the producer chat. But I did want to stop and answer a question before we move on to the next one. Are static ads making a comeback, or is it still video dominant across your portfolio? Or did static ads never go away? Have you
Yeah,
seen success
yeah,
throughout this whole time? I mean, I know that a lot of people are talking about how much more performant video ads are.
yeah. I would just say yes and yes. They've never gone away, but two, static ads go to different users compared to videos based on the demographic you're targeting.
Gotcha. All right, let's move on then. The high performer that wasn't. Now you blacked this out. Was there a specific reason for that, or
Yes, obviously, this is for confidentiality reasons. So
gotcha?
yes,
So tell us about this ad.
yeah. So this ad scaled. It had very, very strong cost per trial. It scaled until it didn't because we were like, and again, the one thing with subscription apps is you're looking at the cost per trial. So cost per trial was super low, performance looked really strong, and then we were like, oh my goodness, the ROAS looks really bad, the revenue looks really bad. And obviously you don't see the ROAS and revenue at the ad level. You saw the ROAS and revenue at the product level, and it looked really bad. And I can show what we found out on the next slide. Yeah, if you go to the next slide, David. Yeah.
Yep.
So here's what we found, right? So we had to run a causality analysis because you don't see, the cost per trial at the revenue at the ad level, because the trial happens the first day, revenue happens 7 days later, so you don't see the revenue. Then we ran a causal analysis. We were like, oh, here's what happened. When this ad bubbled up in the algorithm, cost per trial was amazing, video ads reduced, static scaled up, placement shifted to Facebook, static ads optimized for cheaper CPMs, younger audience reached, trial quality degraded, ROAS dropped. Right? That was the causal chain whereas all the platform showed was cost per trial dropped. And this was a scary moment. And we obviously had to pull this back. In hindsight, it wasn't a high performer because it basically promised free cash. If you go to the previous slide, you could look at the copy. You don't need to know what product it is, but it basically says, get your cash instantly. Right? So if you're like, hey, this is free money, someone's going to click on it, versus a video which goes into a lot more of the nuance of what the product is. And obviously there is no free money. There's no such thing as a free lunch. The video will tell you exactly what you need to do to get the free money. And this one basically said free money. And people is like, okay, let me start the trial. And then they're like, oops, no, I'm not going to pay for this thing.
Yeah. What's funny is a friend of mine actually has one of these kind of apps, and probably not this one that you were doing ads for. But I downloaded the app and I instantly recovered more than I paid for the subscription. And then it helped me apply for a Google YouTube settlement that I think I might, because I've got 4 kids who were all watching YouTube during that time frame, and it was a privacy violation where they were collecting data on kids when they weren't supposed to be. And I might end up making thousands of dollars. So it's one of those frustrating things where like these apps, maybe do kind of over promise, but like for the people it works for, it works crazy well. So it's tough because then some people, they don't find that money. Like mine was like and I just had never thought to check the Texas unclaimed property registration, and it pointed me to the exact URL to go look and how to search and told me how to do it. And I instantly claimed like $90. So anyways, a really interesting category where people are legitimately frustrated when it promises it and they can't, but then a bunch of people actually freaking love it, like me, because you make a ton of money. So kind of a side point, but something I was just talking to my friend about this yesterday. So all right. Before we move on to the next roast, we had another great question come in. So let me show that one. Could you explain AI video content factories? How much does it cost to produce 100 videos a day, month? And how do you track metrics and forecast creative performance? Are you, I mean, I guess you said you've doubled your creative team, so you've got a lot of people managing it. But how do you think about the AI side of things and the costs and things like that?
Yeah, so it costs practically zero. It costs you whatever it costs to get your footage. I think the way we think about it, and we actually tell this to all of our clients, that the cost of production is practically zero. What is harder is figuring out what to produce. And I realize I'm not answering the question directly, but I would just say the direct answer to your question is anywhere from $5 to $10 if you get the raw footage, and anywhere from 2 to 3 hours of a designer's work to make that into a usable ad, I would say. That's sort of the cost structure, depending on how much your designers, and perhaps an hour or so of a strategist's time to plan this out. About 30 minutes per ad for a strategist's time to plan out what needs to be done. So that's the cost is not the hard part. The part is the strategist's expertise to figure out what the designer needs to make, what the footage needs to look like, what needs to be stitched together, and so on and so forth.
Gotcha. We did find the submitted ad. So let me switch my screen sharing to that real quick. It's fun to have things come in live. So thanks for posting this. And it'll be fun to get your live take, Shamanth. I mean, this is the whole thing. We're going to roast these ads live. So
off form.
I just unmuted it, so it may be a little loud, but let me unmute it just for a sec. And I think this is going to loop anyway. So I'll unmute it. We'll watch the ad and then get your reaction.
Yeah. What's working with your form, your main issues, and it'll also tell you how to fix it and give you suggested drills. This app is a game changer for all disc golfers.
All right, let's watch that.
If you're a disc golfer, you know the struggle and pain of working on your form and trying to fix it. Now, you could pay for a disc golf coach to give you tips and feedback on your form, but it could get really pricey, and oftentimes it'll take hours or even days to get feedback on your form. Well, no longer do you have to wait that long to fix your disc golf form. The Disc Golf Form Analyzer app has all the tools to master your disc golf form. All you have to do is literally upload a video of your disc golf throw and you'll get instant feedback on your form. The app uses AI that is custom trained specifically for disc golf. It'll break down your form instantly and it'll tell you what's working with your form, your main issues, and it'll also tell you how to fix it and give you suggested.
Okay, we'd seen the rest of that. Yeah, what do you think? What could they do to improve this?
Yeah, I like the narrative because it follows a specific form. If you are an X with a problem, then this will solve the problem, right? And I thought the beginning was great. The one thing that I think you should do, I think you should test doing differently is I had a hard time reading and paying attention. Really, I think that's something I also noticed with a lot of ads. They don't really focus as much on readability. I would optimize for having the ad be sound off, do well with the sound off, and having one word at a time is just tough. That's one thing you could do better. I thought the first frame was great because again, number one, it is a bit of we like showing motion, and in this case, the motion is relevant, which is great, and that is good. So I would test different first frames though. I would test different visual hooks to see how that does. Yeah, I would also just see, I would also try to hammer home what is the impact of not getting feedback. Because again, I'm not a player, but is there social impact? Which means, do your friends make fun of you? Do you lose a tournament? Or what is the positive impact? Did you win a tournament because of this? Does your girlfriend love you more? I would see if I can test versions of the narrative. So I would go a little bit deeper on the emotional lived experience of this person. Yeah, those are the top of mind thoughts I have.
Yeah, it feels like this is a format too that could incorporate a lot of different. This is an example of like you could spin off 100 different creatives based on this basic idea and maybe even a similar script, and then like you were saying, kind of open with different things. So I actually used to play disc golf, so I relate to this app. And when I'm scrolling Instagram, instead of showing the guy like miss, maybe you show like the most amazing, shot ever, which is maybe more compelling. And like, well, it's always about like getting people to stop that scroll. But then you can try the exact opposite, is like make it an even worse, like it bounces off a tree or like, something like crazy as well. But yeah, it does seem like it's potentially a good format. But a lot of variation on that will then lead to finding that winner. So yeah. All right, let's switch back to the slides and go back through the prepared roast. One sec. All right, so this is Cal.ai, and I'll play a little bit of each of these videos. We won't go all the way through all of them.
If you want to go from looking like this to that, all I did was a calorie deficit, and the best way to make sure you're in that deficit is to track your calories.
So
remember this, is that people are time wasters, and the great majority of people have no goals, they have no priorities, they have no plan.
So video slideshow, typical UGC. That the first one, the transformation was insane. I wonder if that is AI or if that's real, because that is a crazy transition. And then the last one. How did you get your abs tracked with Cal.ai? So yeah, what are your thoughts on these Cal.ai videos?
Yeah, so there's visual sameness. There's all three are dudes with gym selfies. And again, when I did the analysis of about 80 ads, the vast majority of them, I would say over 50% were dudes in gym selfies looking at the mirror, which again leads to a ceiling. Again, I can understand why, because they got a lot of success on TikTok. They are likely seeing a lot of success on Meta. That leads to a scale ceiling at some point. And if they had to break through to the next level, they had to go beyond the gym selfies.
Yeah. It's man, they must have put out like, tens of thousands of creatives over the
They
last year.
haven't.
So yeah, I do wonder if their audience has skewed heavily male because it's a bunch of dudes. I mean, we've
Yeah,
all probably heard the story at this point. Zach
yeah,
and Blake, the former App Mafia team, launched this and have shared a lot of insights around how they did stuff, and
yeah,
they've just tested all sorts of crazy stuff. But it is like a bunch of guys building an app, for themselves in a way. So I wonder if that's maybe part of it,
yeah,
that they don't relate as much. But then on
yeah.
the flip side, it may be that they tried more female videos, and that just didn't work.
It could be, and again, that might just be what's keeping them from scaling. I haven't seen their metrics, but I've
Yeah.
seen their ads. Yeah,
Yeah, but to your point, exactly. It's like they should be trying a more diverse set, like
yeah, yeah,
old man, young
yeah,
woman, like different people, different. I do like the slideshow one, as being very distinct from the video ones. That's a nice kind of format change there. And it sounds
sure.
like that voiceover is like maybe someone famous, and like some kind of speech that they cribbed. Do you know, how is copyright, like how do you think about copyright in these kind of things? Like, can you clip audio from like a famous speech and use it in your ad? Like, how does that work?
It's risky. We don't.
Gotcha.
I know people do.
Yeah.
That's a short version. And I would just say the algorithms can catch on to these things.
Yeah.
And algorithms have caught on to these things, yes.
You can do reaction videos though. Can you do like a reaction video as an ad? And does that kind of skirt the copyright if it's like you reacting to a video?
I don't know. That's a bit of a gray area. If you're reacting to something else, I don't know.
Yeah,
Again, we
yeah,
haven't, we have erred on the side of caution.
yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Cool. Keep the questions coming. These have been some great questions. So keep those coming, and we'll, in the meantime, keep moving on with some of these case studies. Revenge of the Brand Manager. So this is Granola AI. What do you like and what do you dislike about these ads?
Oh, I don't like very much, very many things about this, but this is very beautiful, and this is somebody that really hasn't taken the time or trouble to really understand the world their users inhabit. That's the short version. Just while it's a lot of best practices in direct response advertising, doesn't really speak to what the users are going through, doesn't really speak to the user's lived experience, which is something I talked about with the golf ad. Looks like it was made to be beautiful, and that was about it. And obviously, I don't want to just critique something, but on the next slide, I'll show what I would do differently in something like this, right? So take a specific instance from your user's life, right? So if you're a note-taking app, you just say, hey, here's what happened. The CEO asked what the client said, you freeze, and then you look at this one, right? And for for a comparable app, for a note-taking app, we made very similar things, right? So it's like, hey, my toxic boss said X and shifted the goalpost, and then I pulled up my voice note. I pulled up the note. That kind of lived experience ads work much, much better versus a slogan, which I don't even know what it does for anyone.
Yeah. I think it's easy to err on this side. And Vahe and I, when we do the paywall roast, talk about this a lot. It's like you want the pretty, beautiful, catchy phrase to win. But often it's like not the catchy phrase, but the just more direct phrase of like what they're going to achieve, kind of like what you were talking about
Yeah,
earlier. And then the design, like sometimes the ugly design is actually what wins. And so it's like
yeah,
we love this ideal of like the polished brand advertising, catchy slogan, but yeah, great point that like you really want to diversify away from that kind of stuff generally. Yeah. Cool. Let's hit the next one. Do celeb endorsements work? So this is a hot topic because it just happened this morning. Ladder, one of my favorite apps, and really great team. I've had the CEO, the CPO on the podcast, or VP of product, and great team, great app. And today they partnered with, or over the last few days, I think they've been kind of dropping these this week. They partnered with Hilary Duff, an incredibly famous influencer. She was on the Disney Channel. She's a pop artist. She's got multiple albums, TV shows, all this kind of stuff. So massive celebrity endorsement. And you're going to take the side of do they work and maybe not. And I have some ideas on why maybe they do work. So this is going to be a fun one. So I'll let you kick it off with why you think it might not be a good idea.
Just my experience. I've anonymized the games I've worked for, but I've had 3 data points, 2 different A-list actors and 1 national magazine. And in each of these were for fairly big companies. So we had to present a financial model that said, aha, this national magazine has 40 million people. We think so many people will see our games. We think so many people will click. So we think, our most optimistic estimates were like at least a couple thousand installs, right? Or most pessimistic estimates, right? The most optimistic were like, aha, and all of these were like demographic fit. We're like, oh, this magazine is such a perfect fit for our demographic. This actor is such a perfect fit. This just completely bombed. And I'm like, goodness, that's just a terrible waste of so many people's months of work. Because it's not like you hit up an influencer on TikTok and say, go dude, here's your $200, go. These take so much paperwork and it's just led to nothing. And I just had that experience. And I've also seen IP-based games. I've worked on some myself. Again, I'm not able to disclose the ones I worked on, but these are publicly documented ones. Monopoly Go, 6 billion plus, right? So I think the short version is celebrity endorsements. It's just hard unless the celebrity is embedded with your brand. If Ladder's going to show Hilary Duff in literally every ad of theirs, the CPA will go down. I don't dispute that at all. I just don't think that is the terms of their engagement. I could be wrong. Correct me if anyone from Ladder's listening. Please feel free to correct me. But that's my perspective. But David, I'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah, so I did not talk to Greg about this specific endorsement, or I think he teased to me a month or 2 ago that they were working on it, but we didn't talk specifics of this deal. But I do know, talking to Ladder and other apps in the space, that more and more of these deals, so again, not for sure Hilary Duff is going to operate this way, but one of the things they do that really can make it work is get permission to post ads from the influencer's account directly.
Yes.
And it's a feature in Meta ads now where an influencer or any account can like grant access to somebody else to be placing the ads on their behalf. And so if that's what they're doing, I could see that being incredibly effective. And it did look like they recorded a lot of footage with her. And so I'd imagine they are going to chop that up. And it's such a different experience when you're scrolling through Instagram and see Hilary Duff and then just a tiny little like sponsored badge, like, Meta has been hiding that, making it smaller and smaller and smaller over time. But that's just such a different, scroll stopping experience to see Hilary Duff, see her account, instead of seeing Hilary Duff even on the Ladder account, but then especially just the combination of both. And then the other thing I'll say about this one, and this maybe won't apply to a ton of people in the audience, but Ladder's at a size now. I think they've publicly said they're closing in on $100 million a year in revenue. And when you get that big, it does brand work can start to pay off in that these kind of touch points and associations and things associate your brand with
Yeah.
incredible people and celebrities and things. I've talked about this with multiple people on the podcast over time. Is that as you scale, the things that don't work at a small scale, where you are, a lot of what you were talking about is that kind of direct performance. Like, will it dollar for dollar, show return on ad spend? And with these celebrity deals, once you get to a certain size, you don't really expect a dollar for dollar return directly. You expect it as like a brand halo where your other ads perform better. Even the ads that don't show Hilary Duff perform better because people did see that Hilary Duff is associated with Ladder and she's cool and amazing and super fit and beautiful and all this stuff. And then that kind of like creates this like brand halo effect. And so for Ladder and at their stage, and I probably will have Greg, the CEO, on the podcast in the not too distant future to talk about this, because it's pretty different than what the typical app is doing these days. So I'll have him on to dig a little deeper and talk about what he's thinking. But I would guess it's along those lines: brand halo, being able to show ads with her, potentially being able to show ads with her account. Like there's a lot that these celebrity endorsements are doing these days that aren't your typical, like what used to happen and what, burned a lot of people 5-6 years ago is when you'd pay, and actually we had a revenue cap. We saw some customers do this and it did pay off pretty well. We don't know how much they paid, so it's hard to know exactly, the return on ad spend or anything. But if you have this massive celebrity post to their Instagram, it gets a ton of views, but then, the terms are they remove it in 30 seconds or whatever. And those kind of deals are the ones where it's like, oof, like, is the audience strong enough? Are enough people going to see it before they remove it from their feed? And those kind of celebrity deals, the way it used to be done, I think is 100 times worse than what we're seeing some of these new influencer deals do, with, again, being able to show ads from their account, creating a whole bunch of ads with the person and things like that. So so I'm assuming this is a very different deal, and hopefully it's going to work really well for Ladder. But I think to your point, it's like for most apps, unless you are at that bigger stage, have already, been pushing a bunch of paid ads and kind of saturating some of that audience, then this is kind of the next step, not something you'd want to do super early necessarily.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. And to double click on some things you said, David, how successful they will be will depend on how much they can get that halo effect to be quantified. If they can push a lot of ads featuring Hillary, the CPA will go down. And at the scale that I think they are, I think it's probably going to be very material for them.
Yeah.
And the other thing which I also want to underscore is, at a certain level of scale, you're probably hitting diminishing return from digital direct response media, and you are tapping out your audience on Meta, Google, TikTok. And in fact, I've talked to a number of folks who are spending, multiple millions a month, and they start to look at, if not influencers and celebrities, they start to look at CTV. They start to look outside of the direct response channel. They start to look at CTV, podcasts, and stuff that isn't as directly measurable as Facebook for exactly the same reasons. So I don't think we disagree philosophically overall here.
Yeah. We had a great question related come in. So how do you solve for the attribution problem? We always experience spikes in our months rather than consistent growing curve. We do meta ads, influencers, organic UGC ads. Apps Flyer has not been helpful. So yeah, how do you think about attribution, especially when you're doing so much all at the same time?
Yeah, that's a very big question, but I would, again, it's hard to answer that without a lot of context. I would try, if AppsFlyer hasn't been helpful, number one, I would write to their support, but I would also try to use Meta's SDK, AEM, as a source of truth. I would look at App Store Connect, App Store referral data to validate what Meta is saying versus what AppsFlyer is saying. And, again, it's hard to answer without a lot of context, but please feel free to DM me. I'm happy to share context offline because, without looking at your setup, it's just hard to answer something like this.
Yeah, yeah, those are always tough. Yeah, and the typical advice of like, correlate a spike with, whatever happened to pop off. But it's like that's when you're doing so much all at the same time, it's hard to make those correlations. And attribution still is one of the tougher parts of
Yeah.
running ads these days. All right, let's keep the questions coming. It's been some really great questions. And Josiah, it looks like if you'll reply to Shamanth's tweet on X, that would be the easiest way to get us to the link. I don't know that you may have tried to send the link. I don't know if you can actually post links in YouTube chat, so that may be the problem. It may just be deleting the link when you post it. So go ahead and post it as a reply on X would be the easiest way for us to pick it up. All right, while they're doing that, and while any other questions are coming in, let's hit the next one. Don't talk about habit building unless you're these guys.
Yeah. Right. So something I get fairly often from subscription apps is let's build our messaging around long-term habit building. And it's just a terrible idea because nobody wants to be given extra homework while they're watching an ad. They want to be entertained. Duolingo can mention it, I think, for two reasons. One, they're so big, they can get away with it. Number two, just like Granola, they probably have a brand team that wants them to do it. But literally, just like Granola, I would just talk about the user's problem, user's immediate solution, rather than taking them through the grind of building a habit. That's the short version of this. Yeah.
Is there ever a time and place for that? I mean, like if Cal.ai is a good example where their food logging is such a hassle. It's homework. And what they're showing in the ad is we take the homework and we actually make it easy.
Yeah.
Are there any other examples you can think of where maybe you can kind of give people homework, but like with a solution maybe, or when can it work?
Yeah, so I would point out with Cal.ai, they're not saying you need to track your calories for the next 31 days and then you're going to lose weight just like the dude in the gym selfie. That's not what they're saying, right? And in this case, they're talking about the streak. And in my experience, just showing a streak, showing any sort of fact that this will take a long amount of time is problematic. But I think you should definitely show that you make the hard part easier. There's a number of productivity apps that do that. We looked through a note-taking app which does that. So that's definitely cool and okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. Show the result of the streak. Don't talk about the streak itself.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
All right, another great question came in. I was trying to show it. There we go. Is there a minimum onboarding completion you'd recommend before running ads? And I'll broaden this. Not only minimum onboarding completion, but are there other specific metrics that you look at to kind of determine whether you think running ads will be effective for a particular app?
Yeah. Generally, at least a baseline of organic. The main one I like to look at is trial to paid, assuming you have a trial. Ideally, I like to look at 40 to 60%, 40% as the minimum, bare minimum 30% if you're looking at a 30, because then it means there's a meaningful likelihood that you're going to make your money back when you spend money on ads. I would also just say for the vast majority of early stage folks, put like $100 or $200 worldwide you're going to get very clean signal and see what's your cost per trial, what's your cost per install. If your cost per trial looks like you're going to make your money back, it's worth investing more in ads.
Gotcha. All right, we had another one come in from the chat. So let me share my screen and share that. And warning, I am going to unmute this, so maybe turn down your volume just a little. Never know how loud these things are going to be when I share them. All right, let me unmute. And all right, what are your thoughts on this ad?
Yeah, I think in the age of AI, you can make this look better. And number two,
But do you want to make it better? Is this one of those scroll stoppers? Could go either way, but maybe the advice is at least try one version that looks better.
Yeah, try a version that looks nicer, but also it wasn't clear to me what this is until I sort of looked below and I saw live unscripted game, and then I was like, it is a game, right? And you're obviously contrasting it against a competing game, which I know somewhat tangentially about. So for somebody that is in your market, maybe that's kind of obvious. Yeah, it's also not clear to me. Yes, no ads is good, but again, it's unclear to me what it does for me. Even for games, I would look at, I would look up the big motivators. Is there relaxation? When you say build a business, govern a nation, right? So there's mastery motivation behind this. So there's mastery and there's power. So could you visually depict that inside of your game? When you govern a nation, you're like, be the queen of everything you survey. I'm just making this up. Or, that kind of framing, assuming that is the biggest motivator for your users. So I would look at what is in it for your users. And so that's my top of mind thought.
Yeah, Josiah dropped in the chat when we were talking about making it look nicer. He said, yeah, I thought that. Here, I can pull it up and show it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that too, but the ones that do look nicer would not get as many views on TikTok. I mean, kind of what we were saying. This does seem to be one of those scroll stoppers, and
for sure.
Looking at the hearts, it's got 576 likes. Josiah, drop in the chat. Are you putting money behind this? So or was this fully organic? Because that does seem like it got a lot of views. So, but then maybe to your point earlier, Shamanth, it's like you're getting views, but maybe they're not ultimately high intent. It's not clear what it is. So maybe it's getting a lot of views, but it's not effective as an ad.
Yeah, that definitely happens on TikTok, and also with 25,000, I've seen TikToks with 25, 30,000, which get no installs. I don't think that is the kind of view level where you get any kind of installs. In my experience, it needs to be at least at 100K plus to really move the needle. But Josiah, please correct me if you are getting installs from this.
Yeah, he says 25,000 views. He's not paying ads at all, and 1,000 downloads.
Oh wow!
Off of
Okay, that's impressive.
Views. So it does seem like impressive. It's actually performing pretty well.
Right. So if it's working, do it. Trust the data. Listen to my opinions, but trust the data. And I can see why it's working well, because there's the competitor, which is the BitLife. People are searching for BitLife. They see this. Clearly, that's a high volume term. And in downloading, clearly that's working for you. So keep up the work. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe an example where it's working so well. Don't rock the magic. But then to your first point, it's like just keep trying new
Yeah.
things. Like don't settle on this as the only format that's ever
Yeah.
going to work for you. Keep iterating,
Yeah.
iterating, and
Yeah.
find more things like this that will work.
Yeah, and I would add, if my hypothesis is this is working because you named BitLife in the first slide. So I would build iterations that double down on that and say, how could you keep BitLife in the first account and first slide, and see if you can get more views. And also, this is working well right now, but if you wanted to be scaling this, you will probably need a different playbook. That's something to keep in mind.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are at an hour. Had some really great questions come in. But I did, because we had questions submitted. Do you have a few minutes to go over, Shamanth?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, let me share the three questions. So we're going to skip over some of the prepared roasts and just go right to the three questions that your audience asked, so we can make sure to get those in. So the first one: how should we test creatives for a brand that is early stage and just starting to run ads?
Yeah, so if you can go 2 slides up, and that I think that's also came up in the chat. Go up, go one more up. Yeah, if you're in a budget, just do this. Uh, just use proven formats. If you, somebody else in the chat also asked this. Split screen, listicle, wall of text. Use AI to make these. For copy, use these formulae. I learned X about myself, how I went from X to Y transformation, show my progress, week 1, week 2, etc. And that's really how I would do it at an early stage.
Gotcha. All right, next question. How should we? Oh, and by the way, we are going to share these slides. Shamanth was gracious enough that he'll make this slides public, and we will share the link as a reply to his tweet and to the subclub tweet. So be on the lookout for a link. And then, yeah, I don't think we have it to share in the chat right now, but keep an eye out for that. All right, next question. How should we set creative testing budgets?
Yeah, don't go crazy on testing, because I feel like if you're at a very early stage, you shouldn't even be testing creative. If you're like spending less than, I would say, 300 a day, don't even be testing creatives. Take competitor ads, just take the proven formats, run those. But assuming you're more than that, generally my suggestion is you aim for about 10 to 20% of your overall budget to go into testing. And again, if you're low budget, don't do statistical significance and stuff. Aim for 3 to 4 conversions per ad set, just get enough to get directional learning. Obviously, if you're at massive budgets, if you're spending 50K plus, then you can spend much more meaningfully. Then you can have 5 to 10 conversions per ad set. Then you can have dedicated ad sets. But really, it's a function of the budgets. And my recommendation always is don't do a lot of creative testing until you get to at least 30, 40K a month.
Gotcha. And then the last question: what should my first creatives be if I'm on a budget?
Yeah, I think we went over that earlier, so we are good. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, one last question from the audience. Love all these questions coming in. You would always target trial and not direct paid subscription? Question.
Yeah, so if you have a subscription happening within the first 24 hours, I would target that. And the reason we target trial in most cases is because the purchase happens 7 days out. So the algorithms don't pick up the purchase. So it's just impossible to optimize for that. But if you have a paid subscription without a trial, by all means, go ahead and optimize for it.
Yeah. And then one other hack there I've heard more and more people doing is a paid trial. So like $1 for 30 days, $1 for 7 days. So if you're not having success targeting on trial, and then especially if it's a 7-day trial, so you can't target on subscription either because it's just so long before they convert, then it may be worth, especially for the audience that's coming in via ads, to try a paid trial, worth a shot.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is it for today. Shamanth, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you, audience. A lot of great questions. It was fun to have ads come in live. And Josiah, thanks so much for sharing your ad and sharing the stats behind it. That was really fascinating. So it's been a great audience, and your insights have been fantastic. So thank you. Anything you wanted to share with folks as we wrap up?
No, thank you for all the questions. And I'm going to have David on my podcast. Go to mobileuseracquisitionshow.com. And we have a module called Intelligent Artifice. David's going to be there, I think, in a week and a half. So look for David on this show. And we're going to be talking about some very fun stuff.
Yeah, we already recorded it. So
Yes.
it's a good one. Definitely worth listening to.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much. And then your email is in the slides. We're going to share the slides
Yes.
out. So, if you do want to work with Shamanth, he does have an agency that helps you do these kind of things. So definitely reach out if you need his help or just want some insights. All right, thanks again to everyone, and thank you, Shamanth. And that's it for today. Keep an eye out. We did drop a link in the chat, but next week we're back live, same time, same channel, with Thomas Petit doing more of an AMA this time. So a chance to similar to this, get to ask a great consultant in the industry, whatever's pressing and whatever can help you grow your business. So join us again next week. Bye, everyone.